throughout human history, people have found different ways to, I guess, kind of leave their mark. So on almost every continent of the world, you have cave drawings. You go to Egypt, there's the Sphinx, there's the pyramids. And in the United States, 1,000 years from now, I think that people will look at our mark right here at Mount Rushmore. So today we are at one of the most iconic landmarks in the United States. I haven't been here since I was a kid, so pretty excited to see what we got here today. Mount Rushmore, like I said, one of the most iconic landmarks in the United States. And you might be looking at what I'm looking at right now and thinking, where are all the people? Well, the answer is, they're still in bed. If you want to get here when there are no crowds, you gotta wake up early. I'm not going to show all of them, but along this walkway they have markers for every U.S. state and all of the territories and commonwealths. There it is, Mount Rushmore. Depicting Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt. This was started in 1927. Washington was dedicated in 1930, Jefferson in 36, Lincoln in 37, and Roosevelt in 1939. And I think the final carving was in 1941. Originally, the idea for this was to have life-size sculptings of all four of the presidents, and you can see where they started with Washington, and then I think they just ran out of funding is what it was. So if you look at Washington here, for example, his head is 60 feet high, so from the top of his head to his chin. The mouth is about 18 feet wide, and his nose is about 21 feet high. Alright, just now walking into the museum here. We don't have a ton of time, so this is going to be a quick walkthrough. Now, here's something that I never really thought of. The enemy to a structure like Mount Rushmore is water. So in order to keep the structure sound for as long as we can, they have to do maintenance from time to time and seal up cracks so that water doesn't get in there and then freeze and expand and weather the sculptures over time. Look at this. They actually have sensors up on George Washington's head that allow for constant monitoring of the sculpture. Huh. This is kind of interesting, looking at some of the tools that were used to measure out the faces on Mount Rushmore. So this is just kind of a model showing how a plumb bob would be used to see how far out they needed to go. Here you can see a big old set of calipers. Now this is what Mount Rushmore looked like before the carving took place. And then you can see as you go along here the different tools that they used in order to carve out the mountain. Interesting to see the process here at the museum. So here's an extra little tidbit that they have here that's interesting. They talk about the work of the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Great Depression here in the Black Hills area. And we were at Devil's Tower the other day, so if you haven't watched that video, you can go back and look at it. But here's some items that were found at the CCC camp at Devil's Tower. Huh. Something about Mount Rushmore that people may not know is that there's, I guess you could say, kind of a hidden room behind the sculpture called the Hall of Records. And the door to it is right back there. Yeah, and here's what the doorway to the Hall of Records looks like. You can't go up there, unfortunately, or else I would. But anyway, there it is. All right, just took a quick little round through the museum, and now headed down to the sculpture studio. So I'm down here a little bit closer to the base of Mount Rushmore now, and here on this path they have a bust of Gutzon Borglum, who was the sculptor that is behind Mount Rushmore. And they also have, you know, a few quotes over here, one from Borglum himself talking about the importance of the monument, and another from Calvin Coolidge, who was the president during the dedication in 1927 whenever they got this project started. So this is right here at the sculptor's studio, and they have a thing here showing the 5 steps to carve a mountain. So first they would map out a plan and have the models here in the studio. I think it's interesting that you can see here in the model that the original plan was to have more, I guess more of the torso in the final sculpture, and then they will go up on the mountain, take measurements, blast a bunch of the rock out with dynamite, and then you'd have these workers basically hanging off of swing sets that would use jackhammers and chisels and things like that to drill holes, and then you do the finish work. Really quite an amazing thing that they were able to get such detail carved out of that big, huge rock. All right, they just opened up the sculptor's studio, so we're going to go in and take a look inside and see what they got in there. Back in the museum, I just mentioned the Hall of Records. These are the plans that Borglum had for the Hall of Records at Mount Rushmore. Now, this is really interesting to me. This is the scale model that they had for Mount Rushmore, and this is what it was originally supposed to look like. So you can see that Washington was originally going to have, you know, a lot more of his torso showing. You had Thomas Jefferson behind him. You could see his hand. Looks like Teddy Roosevelt was kind of getting shoved to the back no matter what. And they were supposed to have a lot more of Abraham Lincoln as well. But then I think they ran out of funding and couldn't complete it to its original design. Wow. Getting ready to go on the Presidential Trail to the Grand View Terrace. And they say that this is a strenuous trail with 250 steps. Good. We're making our way around the Presidential Trail here, and it's really nice. This wasn't here whenever I was a kid, but you can get up close and see a lot more detail, such as the detail that was put into Teddy Roosevelt's glasses. They also have different information panels as you go around telling about each one of the individual presidents on Mount Rushmore, such as my favorite, Teddy Roosevelt. And here they have a quote from him, which says, "All my life in politics, I have striven to make the necessary working compromise between the ideal and the practical." Good words of advice. We're about halfway through the Presidential Trail, getting ready to make this final climb up these steps to get to the closest part of Mount Rushmore. All right, approaching the end or at least the close end of the Presidential Trail. And man, look at the view of Mount Rushmore that you get from here. Really have to admire the work that went into this, and just really the artistry to be able to carve these four figures in such detail out of this mountain. Amazing. Down here in the boulder field below the sculptures, you can see all kinds of evidence of where these rocks were drilled and dynamited and blasted out. I don't know, it's kind of interesting to me. Look at how crazy this world has become with this pandemic. Even Abraham Lincoln is wearing a mask. All right, so that was Mount Rushmore. Man, incredible place that I think everybody needs to try and visit at least once. Now, there's been some controversy about Mount Rushmore, in recent days. Some people suggesting that it needs to be completely blown off the mountain or torn down. A lot of that comes from, Washington and Jefferson's history of being slave owners. You have to understand that that was the time that they were living in, and they were inheriting a system that had been around for thousands of years. I'm not defending slavery. It was absolutely wrong. And they were wrong to have had slaves. But I know that history is made up of people, and people are deeply flawed. So, if you're looking for the perfect man or the perfect woman, you're going to find yourself perpetually disappointed. Jefferson, Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr., JFK, they all were deeply flawed, but they all made great contributions as well. So I wonder if we can have some grace and maybe some forgiveness for the people of the past. I wonder if we can kind of learn from their successes and also learn from their shortcomings and try to be better people today. Because who knows what history will judge us harshly over. Anyway, those are just a few thoughts that I had while I was here. Amazing place. If you ever get a chance, come to Mount Rushmore.